सकाळी आम्हाला कल्पना कुठचीच नव्हती की बाबासाहेबांच्या पुतळ्याला चपलेचा हार घातलाय की काय अशी विटंबना केलेली आहे. असं काहीच आम्हाला कल्पना नव्हती. तेवढ्या तिथे पोलिसांची व्हॅन उभी राहिली आणि त्यांनी डायरेक्ट गोळीबार सुरुवात केला. इथे जे उभे होते पाहणारे त्यांनाच इथे गोळ्या लागून ते खाली पडले.
I'm Anand Patwardhan, the director of Jai Bhim Comrade. It's a film that I made over 14 years in India, following an incident where the police killed 10 Dalits because they were protesting against the desecration of their leader's statue. They were unarmed and the police just went in and shot them. And since then, there's been a court case that's gone on for many years, and I followed those things. But I also followed the music of the Dalit community because a friend of mine, Vilas Gogre, 4 days after this incident committed suicide. And he was a musician whose song I'd used in a film that I made many years before that on the slums of Bombay. And after Vilas died, I didn't have much material of him singing. I had just one song, but I had recorded a lot of his music. So I incorporated that music in this film, and I also followed other musicians like him. So in a sense, this is a kind of a musical history of the Dalit movement in recent years, and also traces back this very long tradition of reason that has gone on ever since the caste issue first arose. I mean, caste in India is probably anything between 2,000 and 5,000 years old. And it divided people into priests, warriors, traders, and the workers. Those who did the worst kinds of work were treated as untouchables. Today, the untouchables call themselves Dalits, which literally means the oppressed. When I began filmmaking, which was almost 40 years ago, there was very little independent documentary in India. The only documentaries that were made in those days were government propaganda films that used to play before every fiction film in the cinema. So independent documentaries were rare, and even long format documentaries were rare. But now there's much more of that going on, mainly because of the digital revolution. When I began, we shot on film, and then slowly the equipment became more accessible. So now there's plenty of documentaries being made, but documentaries are not distributed easily at all. As I said, there's no official distribution mechanism for documentaries. So the two places that a documentary could have gone to would be television, and the other would be in the cinema. But the cinema doesn't show documentaries. It's almost impossible to get a documentary in the cinema. Television is, again, pretty dumbed down. The private television and the government television is controlled. I've succeeded in getting many of my films on the government-run television by going to court against the government, by actually fighting for my freedom of expression and right of the public to information. And I've won a lot of those cases, and those films got telecast. But this film, I bought a video projector, and we've been doing hundreds of screenings in the slum areas and the communities, the areas where I had filmed, as well as people like them in other parts of the country. So, and the reception's been amazing. We have 1,000 people, 1,500 people at every screening, because people can't afford chairs very often. They stand up or they sit on the floor. And so we've had amazing screenings, and they continue.
My name is Musa Syeed. I'm the writer and director of Valley of Saints. It's a feature film set in Kashmir. It's a romance set against the political instability of the region. The film follows the story of a Kashmiri boatman named Gulzar who is trying to run away from Kashmir, but in the process he finds himself trapped in his home during a military curfew on this beautiful lake, the Dal Lake in Kashmir, which has this unique community of boat people who live on islands and boats. He meets this woman who's doing research on the lake, and he starts to form this sort of tenuous romance with her, amidst this sort of unstable time. And when the curfew is finally lifted, he has to decide whether he still wants to leave or to stay behind with this new love. I was drawn to making a film in Kashmir because my family is from there. I was born and raised in America, but my parents were born in Kashmir. I wanted to tell a story about Kashmir that wasn't just about the conflict or about the violence that is usually associated with the place, but a story that was more about what daily life is like in this very beautiful but very dangerous place. I drew inspiration a lot from the neo-realist tradition in filmmaking, and one of the great filmmakers in that tradition is Satyajit Ray from India. Shortly before I went to Kashmir, I bought a book of interviews that he gave about his experiences making, particularly the Apu trilogy, and he just talked about working with non-actors, working in real locations, and the challenges and tricks that he learned. He would light a firecracker behind a actor, like a young boy, to like elicit a sense of surprise. So I would do things sort of like that. I mean, with my actors, because I wasn't working with professional actors. I wanted to work with non-professional actors who were from the communities that I was filming in, so that the film would have this sense of legitimacy and authenticity, which I think we have in the film. We were in the midst of a military curfew when we started production on the film. We didn't know that was going to be the case, and we were really sort of caught off guard by how unstable things had gotten. So I had to do a lot of reworking of the script right away, and to work with the limitations that we found ourselves in. And so we had an actress in America that we had cast that we eventually let go and just decided to cast locally entirely, and do the film all in Kashmiri language, and limit the location mostly to just the lake. We found ourselves coming face to face with some of the instability in the region, with some of the protests and so forth. And we, one night we were followed home by an undercover police officer who was threatening that he was going to deport us, or he was going to take our footage, and so on and so forth. The star of the film, who's also a local there and a boatman on the lake, he invited this policeman home with us. And at first I thought he was crazy for bringing him with us, but then he sat him down, gave him tea, talked to him, and then we gave him some money, and then he left us alone. So, I mean, there was things like that where we had to learn how to navigate sort of, the uncertainties of working on the ground there. I wanted to tell a story about Kashmir that wasn't necessarily about the politics or the conflict. And the one thing that I think anyone can sort of understand and appreciate about Kashmir is its landscape and the beauty of this place, even in the face of all that's going on, that this place still is beautiful. The environment and nature faces its own dangers. And in a way, I saw that as being a symbol and an allegory for society in general, that there is still a lot of beauty in this place, and it persists even in the face of destruction, but there's something there that can be saved and nurtured.
Infinite stories, one film festival.